Picture this: you've been working incredibly hard at your job for years. You help your teammates, you deliver results, you play by the rules. Then promotion day arrives, and who gets the big office? That person who takes credit for everyone else's work and constantly flatters the boss. Meanwhile, you're left wondering what just happened. Here's something that might surprise you. Research spanning decades shows that people with narcissistic or manipulative traits are significantly more likely to emerge as leaders. Studies have found that these individuals are perceived as more confident and charismatic, making them about 30% more likely to be chosen for leadership roles than their equally qualified peers. The very behaviors parents discourage in children, taking advantage of others, focusing only on themselves, bending the truth, are actually rewarding people in our professional world. Just look around. CEOs announcing mass layoffs while purchasing private jets, politicians rebounding from scandals stronger than before, celebrities behaving abominably yet commanding millions of followers. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're exploring one of life's most puzzling questions: why do difficult people often seem to get ahead? We'll discover what a brilliant advisor named Niccolo Machiavelli figured out 500 years ago that many of us still struggle to accept: the uncomfortable truth about power, success, and human nature. By the end of this video, you might question everything you thought you knew about getting ahead. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll discover how to navigate this reality without compromising who you are. Imagine 16th century Italy. A brilliant political advisor named Niccolo Machiavelli sits in exile, thinking about why he's lost everything while corrupt leaders thrive. After being wrongfully punished and banished, he had seen firsthand how the game of power really worked. His conclusion: success and traditional good behavior rarely go hand in hand. In his famous book The Prince, Machiavelli wrote something revolutionary: how one lives is so far distant from how one ought to live, that he who neglects what is done for what ought to be done sooner learns to bring about his own ruin than his preservation. In simple terms, playing nice while everyone else plays dirty is the fastest way to lose. Think about your own experiences. Have you ever watched the office smooth talker get promoted? The schooled troublemaker become popular? The cutthroat business outperform the ethical one? I'm guessing you've seen this pattern play out. But why does this happen? It's not random. The traits we consider difficult — manipulation, coldness, strategic dishonesty — aren't just random bad behaviors. They're survival tactics that develop specifically because they help secure resources and status in competitive environments. Let me explain with a simple comparison. Imagine life as a card game. The completely honest player shows their cards. The strategic player keeps their cards hidden. The manipulative player convincingly bluffs. Who wins when it matters most? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Psychology research has shown that when ordinary participants are temporarily given feelings of power, they become significantly less concerned about others and more willing to break moral rules. Power literally changes how people think about right and wrong. But Machiavelli wasn't just saying bad people win. His insight was much more nuanced. He argued that effective leaders need flexibility in their moral code, knowing when traditional good behavior serves their goals and when it doesn't. As he famously wrote, it is necessary for a prince who wishes to maintain himself to learn how not to be good, and to use this knowledge or not to use it according to necessity. Notice he doesn't say being bad is better. He says knowing when not to be traditionally good is essential. This isn't mindless harshness, it's strategic flexibility. But here's my question to you: is success worth it? If you have to compromise who you are to get there, what price are you willing to pay for power? When researchers study the successful difficult people phenomenon, they focus on three specific traits that often appear together. They call it the dark triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy, or in everyday language, excessive self-importance, strategic manipulation, and emotional coldness. People with excessive self-importance believe they're special and deserve special treatment. Think of that coworker who can't stop mentioning their achievements, or the classmate who acts like they're the main character in everyone else's story. Strategic manipulators see relationships as chess pieces to be moved around a board. Remember that friend who always seems to know everyone's secrets but keeps their own life mysteriously private. Those with emotional coldness lack concern for others and act without regard for consequences. They're the ones who can let go of an entire department without losing sleep, or blame others without a second thought. Now here's the million-dollar question: do these traits actually help people succeed? According to psychological research, the answer is yes, but with a major catch. Studies have found that people with these difficult traits excelled in job interviews, they created better first impressions, and were rated as more hireable than equally qualified candidates. Why? They projected unshakable confidence, made bold promises, and knew exactly what interviewers wanted to hear. In your everyday life, you've probably noticed this too. Who gets picked first for teams? Often not the most skilled player, but the one who acts most confident, who gets attention at gatherings. Not necessarily the most interesting person, but the one who commands the room. Let's shift contexts entirely. In politics, we repeatedly see how these same dynamics play out. Research on political behavior reveals a fascinating paradox. Voters often rate aggressive tactics, like interrupting, as negative in the moment, but still perceive candidates using them as strong leaders and more presidential in overall impressions. This disconnect between what we say we value and what actually influences our choices explains a great deal about modern political landscapes. The hard truth is this: the very capacity for moral concern that makes someone good can become a disadvantage in environments that reward quick, consequence-minded action. So here's my question for you. Are these traits actually wrong if they're rewarded by our systems, or have we built a world that unfortunately encourages the worst in human nature? Prisoner's dilemma. Let's get practical. Imagine life as a game with rules. Most of us believe everyone should follow, be honest, tell the truth, treat others fairly. But what happens when some players ignore the rule book while you stick to it? You lose. It's that simple. A fascinating global experiment tested this idea in a creative way. Researchers planted 17,000 lost wallets in 40 countries to see who would return them. Surprisingly, about half of people returned wallets containing money, but most participants estimated only about a quarter of others would do the same. Think about what this means. We believe we're playing by rules that 3/4 of people around us are breaking. That's not moral superiority, that's strategic misfortune. Consider education. Students who acknowledge getting help on assignments often receive less credit than those who present others' work as their own. The honest are penalized while the dishonest are rewarded. This creates a perverse incentive structure that punishes integrity rather than fostering it. Workplace studies have confirmed this reality too. Employees who engaged in office politics, forming strategic alliances, controlling information flow, taking credit, received better evaluations and more promotions than equally skilled colleagues who didn't play these games. But here's where Machiavelli's insight becomes truly powerful. He didn't just observe this pattern. He questioned whether our entire approach to ethics makes sense in competitive environments. As he wrote, "A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good." In simple terms, playing by rules others ignore is setting yourself up for disappointment. This creates what game theorists call a prisoner's dilemma, a situation where cooperation would benefit everyone, but individual incentives favor selfish behavior. If everyone returned lost wallets, we'd live in a more trusting society. But if you return a wallet while others keep them, you're just falling behind. So what's the solution? Do we all become difficult to survive? Not necessarily. The most successful strategy in repeated prisoner's dilemma competitions is surprisingly balanced. It's called tit for tat with forgiveness and works like this. Start by cooperating. If someone takes advantage of you, protect yourself. When they start cooperating again, be willing to forgive. Think about how this might work in your life. You begin projects assuming the best of colleagues. If someone takes advantage, you establish boundaries. When they demonstrate trustworthiness, you rebuild cooperation. This balances ethics with self-protection, exactly what Machiavelli suggested centuries ago. But this strategy only works in environments where you interact with the same people over time. Reputations matter, and communication is possible. So I'll ask you this. In your school, workplace, or social circle, do these conditions exist? Or have you found yourself in a one-time game where difficult traits flourish without consequences? We've seen how difficult traits can help people climb to the top, but what happens once they get there? Do these successful difficult people create thriving organizations and societies, or is there a hidden cost to their rise? The evidence is clear. A landmark study by researchers Chattock and Hamrich, tracking Fortune 500 companies, found that firms led by narcissistic CEOs showed volatile performance, with initial gains followed by long-term decline. These companies showed impressive gains initially: bold acquisitions, stock price jumps, headline-grabbing initiatives, but after about 3 years, performance dropped below industry averages. Why? The researchers found a pattern: early success from risk-taking and decisive action, growing resistance as employees and partners experienced the leader's harmful behavior, and major failure when overconfidence prevented course correction. Think about that difficult boss you've had. At first, their confidence might seem refreshing. 6 months later, you're updating your resume. Now multiply that effect across an entire organization. We see this same pattern in modern business too. Take Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos. She rose meteorically by projecting unshakable confidence and making grandiose promises about revolutionary blood testing technology. For years, her charisma and manipulation attracted billions in investment and a $9 billion valuation. But when the truth emerged that her technology didn't work, everything collapsed. Now she's facing the consequences of prioritizing image and power over substance and integrity. But the real damage happens when these personalities reshape organizations in their image. Business ethics research has discovered that employees working under difficult leaders gradually adopt similar behaviors themselves, what researchers called ethical contagion. Imagine a classroom where cutting corners is rewarded, or a sales team where misleading customers becomes normal. Over time, even previously ethical people adapt to survive in these environments. As philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned, beware that when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster. For when you gaze long into the abyss gazes also into you. This explains why harmful cultures persist even after the original difficult person leaves. The damage extends far beyond one person's actions. But not all powerful people create this downward spiral, which brings us to a crucial distinction. The two types of power. Everything we've discussed might suggest that being difficult is the only path to the top, but that's not the whole story, not even close. It's worth noting that what constitutes effective leadership varies significantly across cultures. What appears as successful difficult behavior in highly individualistic societies might be career suicide in collectivist cultures that value harmony and consensus building. These cultural differences remind us that Machiavellian dynamics, while universal, manifest differently depending on local values and contexts. Researchers distinguish between two fundamental types of power. Dominance power comes from fear, manipulation, and control, the Machiavellian approach. Prestige power emerges from respect, admiration and voluntary deference, the path of excellence and integrity. Both approaches can work, but they operate on different timescales and create dramatically different results. Let's look at how these traits play out in real business leaders. Consider Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos and his approach to workplace management. Bezos built one of the world's most valuable companies while implementing punishing workplace practices. Reports from Amazon warehouses describe workers skipping bathroom breaks to meet quotas, enduring physical strain, and being monitored by algorithmic systems that track their every move. This dominance-based approach delivered incredible shareholder value, but at a significant human cost. Bezos exemplifies how Machiavellian leadership can yield tremendous financial success while creating environments that many consider exploitative. Which approach would you rather take? A fascinating longitudinal study tracked managers' careers and found something surprising. Those with narcissistic traits gained early promotions but often derailed mid-career due to employee backlash. Meanwhile, leaders with emotional intelligence and integrity achieved slower but more stable success. Why? Because dominance power generates compliance but breeds resentment and resistance. Prestige power builds slower but creates loyalty and commitment. This distinction appears throughout nature. Leading primates who rule through aggression are eventually overthrown. Those who build coalitions and share resources maintain their position much longer. Ever wonder why some of the most successful people in history combined exceptional achievement with genuine concern for others? Think of Abraham Lincoln, or modern examples like Dolly Parton. Anthropologists Henrik and Gil White found that prestige-based leaders, those respected for competence and generosity, build more sustainable influence than dominance-driven ones. The most effective leaders aren't those who abandon virtue for results, but those who understand how to make virtue effective. As organizational researcher Adam Grant observes, the most effective leaders score high in both assertiveness and empathy. They're willing to push hard for their goals but remain attentive to how their actions affect others. So I ask you, which form of power are you developing? Are you building dominance that might yield quick results but limited durability, or are you cultivating the deeper prestige that creates lasting influence? Practical strategies. Let's get practical. How do you navigate a world where difficult traits often seem rewarded without becoming what you dislike? Here are 3 straightforward strategies. First, recognize what's actually happening around you. Not understanding power dynamics doesn't make you virtuous, it makes you vulnerable. Think of it like defensive driving. You don't need to drive aggressively, but you should understand what aggressive drivers might do. Pay attention to how decisions really get made in your organization. Notice who influences the key people and observe which behaviors get rewarded versus which get publicly praised. Remember, understanding isn't the same as approving. You can recognize the game without playing it the same way. Second, be strategically good rather than naively good. In team projects, start by being generous with your time and ideas. If someone takes advantage, don't just keep giving. Document your contributions, clarify expectations, and set clear boundaries. Here's a practical example. When a colleague repeatedly takes credit for your ideas in meetings, don't just silently seethe. Instead, try saying something like, "Thanks for bringing up the point I mentioned earlier. I'd love to expand on how we can implement it." This respectfully reclaims your contribution without creating conflict and signals to others that you're aware of what's happening. The key is balancing your values with self-protection. As author Stephen Covey put it, you can be kind without being taken advantage of. Lastly, be selective about where you spend your time and energy. Some organizations actually reward ethical behavior through transparent feedback, focus on long-term results, and team-based incentives. Companies like Patagonia have built amazing success while maintaining strong values. Research the culture before joining any group, find mentors who've succeeded with integrity, and be willing to leave environments that won't improve. Remember, you don't have to play every game you're invited to. What if we've covered a lot, but there's one final piece to consider? What if the issue isn't just how we play the game, but how we define winning in the first place? Machiavelli focused exclusively on gaining and keeping power, but is power alone really success? Research from the field of positive psychology consistently shows that once basic needs are met, additional power, status, and wealth add very little to happiness and life satisfaction. Far more important are meaningful relationships, purposeful work, and alignment between values and actions. Think about the truly happiest people you know. Are they the ones with the most impressive titles, the biggest houses, the most control over others, or are they people who've built lives that reflect their deepest values? Decades of research in self-determination theory by psychologists Detsy and Ryan show that people prioritizing extrinsic goals like wealth and fame report lower well-being than those focused on intrinsic goals. This holds true even when the first group achieves their goals. This suggests a profound truth. Perhaps the ultimate response to Machiavelli isn't rejecting his insights about power dynamics, but expanding our definition of success beyond the limited game he described. As psychologist Viktor Frankl wrote, "Success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue as the unintended side effect of one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself." So here's my challenge to you. What game are you really playing? Are you chasing the kind of success that might elevate you temporarily at others' expense, or building the kind that elevates everyone it touches, including yourself? The truly wise person doesn't just play the game skillfully, they choose the right game in the first place. Conclusion: we started with an uncomfortable truth: difficult people often seem to succeed. We've discovered this isn't entirely false. Challenging traits do provide advantages in competitive environments, especially in the short term. But we've also seen that this success is frequently unstable, unsatisfying, and ultimately self-defeating. The Machiavellian approach works until it doesn't, and when it fails, it tends to fail dramatically. Recognize the actual game being played around you. Develop strategic goodness that balances values with self-protection. Carefully choose environments that reward integrity, redefine success beyond power and status. Remember that human societies operate on different time frames. What works in the moment may harm the future. What appears effective in isolation may destroy the connections that make lasting achievement possible. Perhaps the most powerful response to the success of difficult people isn't to join them or judge them, but to create alternatives, to show through your life that lasting achievement is possible without compromising your values. The numbers back this up too. Gallup's Global Workplace Report found that teams led by unethical managers experience 43% higher turnover and 18% lower productivity than ethically led teams. The short-term gains of these challenging approaches simply don't outweigh their long-term costs. So the next time you face a moral choice in your career or life, ask yourself one simple question: will this decision lift others up, or just myself? Because true success isn't just about rising, it's about bringing others with you. If you found value in this exploration, please share it with someone who might benefit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and subscribe for more deep dives into the questions that shape our lives. Until next time, remember that the greatest power isn't controlling others but mastering yourself.